Now, we are turning our attention to the Grand Prix this weekend. This is
a little bit of Monza action. This is the one that I so last year I went to the Spa Grand Prix in Belgium, which was the week before Monza. Made the absolute horrific decision of going to Spa when it was rained out, and then the following week, in the sun in Monza, my favourite driver Daniel Ricciardo goes and wins it.
Why would you pick to go to Belgium instead of Italy? What possessed you?
Because the rain usually makes it a very exciting race in Spa.
Right.
In the middle of the Ardennes forest, you get plenty of rain, but an absolute howler of a decision.
Italy, like the nicest part of the world to go and visit.
Hindsight is 20/20, Ger.
Even the bad petrol stations have the nicest pizza you've ever had.
See, I'd imagine Jess McFadyen wouldn't have made that terrible call, but I unfortunately did.
Jess, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I would choose both. So I'm lucky enough that I've been to both, and they are both great for different reasons. But you're right. Last year was a bad choice. Sorry.
Still not over it.
What's going to happen this weekend?
Well, if Max carries on his current form, it could be another Max victory, and I think it will be his 5th in a row. So I think it's going to be pretty hard to stop Max on his current run of form. He's looking unstoppable this season.
It was funny last weekend, Jess, at Zandvoort, where like we haven't really seen the Hamilton-Verstappen rivalry at all this season, and really last weekend was probably the closest they've come since Yas Marina last year. It was great to see Hamilton pushing him, and obviously ultimately Verstappen overtook him and won the race, but it was nice to get that little bit of nostalgia for that little rivalry last weekend.
It was. Whether you called it nostalgia or PTSD, I guess it depends on how you felt last year went. But yeah, it was great. It was great to see a competitive Mercedes package, because, Ferrari seemed to just keep dropping the ball. So that it was good to have at least 2 drivers pushing Max. Unfortunately, it didn't go their way, but it was great. And, we had some really interesting strategy plays. There was a lot for us to kind of unpick following when the checkered flag dropped. There was loads for us to be asking, like, why did you make that decision? And, why did you put Russell on softs and leave Hamilton out there exposed? And obviously that's where Max got him at the safety car restart. So last weekend was great. It was, I can't believe we're talking about being surprised that Mercedes are competitive, but hey, that's 2022.
It's funny that Verstappen pretty much all but mathematically has the title race sewn up, and yet does it become a point now, Jess, where he turns his attention to records? I think that was his 10th win maybe last weekend, and Schumacher and Vettel have the record jointly on 13 race wins in one season. So it's going to become the kind of Cristiano Ronaldo individual records kind of question now for Max. Surely he's out to get these records.
Do you know what? When you ask him about records, even about championships, after winning last year, he said, I've completed F1 now. I don't really need to win another title. I'll always be a world champion. So he's not really that fussed about records. I think he's one of those drivers that, probably a nice to have, but it's not really on his hit list. He just wants to go out there and win. And if that means that he then beats somebody's record, then yeah, all right. But he's very lackadaisical about those things, which is quite funny. I think we get more excited about them than he does. But yeah, if he wins in Monza, he could have this title wrapped up by Japan. So that's another 2 races time. So yeah, it's kind of, especially after how close last season was, a bit disappointing that we could have the title wrapped up and not really anything to get excited about anymore than maybe the constructors. But for people watching, it's the drivers is the more important championship. So it's a bit of a shame, but it just goes to show how right Max and Red Bull have had it this year, and they will be, especially again dependent on how you saw last season play out, this season they will be undoubtedly very deserving champions.
It's a very important point to make that, most people are very into the Drivers' Championship as opposed to the Constructors, and yet obviously the teams really value that. But to that crossover appeal that we've talked about consistently over the last 18 months, where the casual fan is now tuning in, you don't want these processions where we know in advance who's going to win the big prize at the end. So I guess a lot of the conversation at the moment is about next year and making sure that there is going to be a proper competition for the Drivers' Championship. What's your feeling about what next year will actually look like on the basis of what we're seeing at the moment?
I think, we had such a massive regulation change at the start of the season. And if you look back through the history books, which for casual fans, new fans, I would definitely say go and do, because you learn a lot. But we usually get this sense where one team ordinarily will just nail it, and they will have a very, very strong season that can often be as runaway as it has been this year. I mean, with Mercedes, we had it for multiple seasons. Now, I'm not sure that's going to happen next year. At least the optimist in me doesn't think that maybe is going to be. We're not going into another period of one team dominant. I think we are still going to be having higher competitiveness, because I mean, for all of Ferrari's maybe blunders this season, they have a very strong car. So if they can learn from this season, tidy up a little bit the internal problems that they've had going on, that maybe they're not as on it as Red Bull are in terms of in race moments, we could be having they could be coming back stronger for sure. And Mercedes, you cannot say that they won't have the investment and the wherewithal to go away and go, right, we got the beginning of the season completely wrong. How do we come back and make sure that doesn't happen? They're pretty confident that they know what is wrong, and over the winter break they'd be able to fix it. So if we've got 3 teams in it next year, properly in it, 6 drivers properly in it, then that's a recipe for greatness. So I'm almost like, I'm going to let this season lie, just because of what a massive change it was, and for everybody to have come out and got it right. I don't think that's ever happened when we've had a regulation change. So let's leave 2022 as for what it was and for what it is, and definitely get excited about next season.
Just on Ferrari, Jess, that you mentioned there, I mean, promised so much at the start of the season. I think they won 2 of the first 3 races, and you're thinking, right, this is going to be great. Like, some of their strategy calls have been absolutely ridiculous, and even some of the basic errors in operation, like for anyone watching last weekend, I think was it Carlos Sainz's first pit stop where they put 3 wheels on the car, and you're just sitting there watching, pretty sure the car needs 4 wheels. Like, some little moments like that where Ferrari have just been all at sea. I know, like, this is obviously their home race at Monza this weekend. The pressure goes up more than just a notch. Talk of a new rear wing for them as well, to try and maybe catch up to that pace of the Red Bulls. But the pressure is really on them this weekend, Jess.
It is, but they're also used to losing in Monza. So, I mean, Charles Leclerc is the most recent Ferrari winner. Back in 2019, I think he won there. It was great for them. It was amazing, but it was the first time that they'd won in, I can't remember how many years, but it'd been a very long time since they'd had. I think Fernando Alonso was the last winner in a Ferrari at Monza. So they're kind of used to it being this. It's called the Cathedral of Motorsport, and it is absolutely probably one of the. I've not been able to go to Zandvoort yet since it's come back, and everybody says what an amazing atmosphere it is there. But Monza I have been to, and it is, the Tifosi are incredibly passionate for Ferrari, and you do feel like if you are not wearing red, you do feel very noticeable. But it's a great place, and I think the passion hasn't waned. At least I hope it won't have done this year, even though I'm sure Tifosi are a bit disappointed, just given how promising the start of the season was. But yeah, I mean, pressure's on. They're also, it's a big celebration for them. They're celebrating 75 years of Ferrari. They've got a celebration livery. They've brought a bit of the Modena yellow to the car. They'll be wearing yellow race suits. So, they're still celebrating it, even if maybe on track. They definitely don't think that they've got the right package to be super competitive in Monza. It's, such high speed, and they just don't think that they've got the right package to be able to compete with the speed of Red Bull. So, yeah, it's probably going to be one where they turn up. They'll be happy if they end up on the podium. That would be enough, I think, for the Tifosi and for Ferrari, especially given how much they've missed out this season, or the last few races anyway as well. So yeah, I think it will just be one of those ones that I'll be like, it's great, but let's skip it quickly.
Are you
moving on?
Are you reading anything into how pissed off Lewis Hamilton was last weekend? Is that just because he's competitive and so therefore that's all we should expect, or is it he's so pissed off because he's got so few opportunities left to win, or he's so pissed off because he was actually so close to winning and so therefore proving that the car could be competitive next season? Any of these sound plausible?
Yeah, I think probably the latter. It was so unexpected. They were pretty confident that they could be competitive in Zandvoort, and before we went into qualifying, we thought, oh, maybe Mercedes are going to have a shoe in at challenging Max at least, and it was really tight for qualifying, but unfortunately Mercedes weren't quite up there. So the fact that they were able to then go really ballsy on strategy, and have them at a point where all of a sudden we're like, they could win this now. Like they've nailed this strategically. And then it's F1. So if you get a VSC, a virtual safety car, or a safety car thrown at the wrong time for you, all of that hard work just falls away. And that's essentially what happened with Lewis. And I think, Lewis, we were talking about records earlier. He is a driver who has won a race in every season that he's competed in. And 2022 looks like maybe that's going to be the first time he doesn't. So I think it was very emotional. He said, the reason why he was so upset was because he knows how hard every single person in the Mercedes team is working to get the team back up there where it feels like it belongs. And to not be able to deliver on a win for them, I think he took that very hard. He's a very emotional driver. He gets very affected by that. And I think he thought that Mercedes maybe threw it away. But in the heat of the moment, especially when the driver can only see what's going on in front of them, they can't see what's going on elsewhere on track. They only get the information their engineers giving them. I think in the heat of the moment, of course, he was really upset. Of course, he was very, very disappointed. And afterwards, when he spoke, he explained why. He said it was just because it was so disappointing that we were so close. We've been working so hard and we have nothing to show for it. I mean, Russell got P2, which was great. I mean, I thought his own personal strategy calls were spot on. He's really proving to be a very, very formidable driver in all aspects, including calling his own strategies, which is what you want, really. But yeah, I think it's pure disappointment, because we don't know when they're going to get another shot. Again, they're probably not going to be very competitive around Monza. So, when is that opportunity going to arise again where they could potentially take a win home? I don't know if that's going to happen. So, yeah, I think it was just super, super disappointment.
It's almost hard to believe, Jess, that Daniel Ricciardo won at Monza last year, given all that's happened to him this year. And I know that was McLaren's first win in a decade, I think, almost. And like, when you look at what's happened this season, even for Ricciardo last week at Zandvoort, I mean, qualifying 10 places behind your teammate bruises the ego somewhat. And then, of course, finishing, I think, second last of the cars that finished. Like, at the minute, he doesn't have a seat for 2023, Daniel Ricciardo, which will come as a disappointment to all, even neutral Formula One fans.
Yeah.
Is he at the moment now playing for a place on the grid next season? And like, are there any teams that you think, I know Haas was rumoured at one point, but where do you think he ends up next season? Is he in danger of not being on the grid whatsoever?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. I think he genuinely is, well, multi-million-dollar question when it comes to driver salaries. But more and more, I'm thinking he's going to take a year out and not be on the grid next season, which I know would be a big blow for a lot of people. But the problem is with Daniel, he's moved now. This is his third team in Formula One, and fourth team technically, but if you count Toro Rosso, but obviously that was in the Red Bull family. There's not really many other places that he can go, and he has said he wants to be competitive. Now, you mentioned Haas. Haas is an interesting prospect because they look like potentially they're going to get an injection of investment in the form of they've been whispering about getting a headline sponsor. Hopefully nothing like a Rich Energy again. We need to or a Carly. They kind of need a headline sponsor that's not going to cause them some problems. But if they do get an injection, it is a good team, and it could be a place that builds itself around Daniel because of his experience, because he is a proven multiple race winner, not just Monza. He won at Red Bull as well, but that feels like a very, very long time ago. It could be a good move for him, but what he doesn't want to end up in is kind of like tootling around in the midfield and not within a sniff of a win ever. McLaren, whilst yes, we mentioned like he's not got on very well. We were talking about Lando Norris. He's due a win. And with McLaren last season, especially, he almost did win in Russia. So it's McLaren you wouldn't count as a tootling midfield team. It is competitive and can take advantage of opportunities when the top three kind of miss out. But I don't think he really wants to. I don't think he wants, like, the Haas move doesn't sound sexy to him. So I think we'll have to see. My money's on him taking time out and seeing how the grid shuffles out in future and talking to teams about another drive. But yeah, he's running out of options now, and it looks like he can't go back to Alpine, Renault, where he was before. It looks like they are dead set on Gasly if Red Bull can negotiate Colton Herta, the IndyCar driver. If he can get a super license, they want to bring him in to replace Gasly at AlphaTauri, but that's whether or not the FIA will make an exemption for him, because he currently doesn't have enough super license points, even though he's done very, very well in IndyCar. So, I mean, it's been amazing kind of chess play here. In terms of silly season, it's been really interesting to work out. But yeah, when the music stops, there might not be any seats left for Daniel to jump into. So we could be looking at a grid without Ricciardo's name on it next year.
Yeah, scary prospect. I mean, and just a final one for me, Jess. The Oscar Piastri mess finally over to some degree, and he will drive for McLaren next year. But it's kind of set a precedent in some ways, and just interesting reading some of the comments, especially from Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, where he said, George Russell and Esteban Ocon, we financed them a long way on. And of course the insinuation here being that if you finance a driver, of course they should maybe repay you when it comes to being a Formula 1 driver on the grid. And he said, to know now a precedent has been set that if you are clever, you can manoeuvre yourself out of something that's clearly not good for the industry, so we will employ even more lawyers for even stricter contracts. Like, it's you feel like it's going to change the sport, this Oscar Piastri mess, and it's maybe not going to go away anytime soon.
I think that's, I mean, I understand where Toto's coming from, of course, because, you know, as he said, these young driver programs, they invest a lot of money in young talent in order to secure the future of the team by having great drivers on their roster. But if you look at the timeline of what happened with Oscar, I actually do not blame the kid one iota of what he did. Alpine just did not show any forthcoming in terms of locking him in a proper contract. If you look at what actually he signed, it was so vague. It just said, yeah, we'll put you in an F1 seat at some point. Now, he's already been sat waiting in the sidelines for Alpine to decide what it's going to do. And the agreement that he was November 2021 is when he signed this vague terms sheet, and he was promised within 10 days he would have a reserve driver contract and an F1 driver contract that would detail where he would end up at what stage. And it took months. I think it was 3 months, 4 months until it actually materialized. And by which point it was still too vague, and the Alpine just delayed to the point where they ended up sending the terms sheet to the contract recognition board, which is what you have to do for every contract you have with a driver. You have to send the contract off to the CRB, and it was just so vague that when it came to eventually talking to McLaren, because by that point they'd been waiting patiently, nothing materializing, and then essentially what they were shown was, you're not going to be racing with Alpine until at least 2025, and we're going to stick you in a Williams. And that's not what Oscar wanted, or that's not what Oscar agreed, and his management team agreed with Alpine. And so what turned out was that he then decided to go and speak to other teams, which I think, you know, I'm not an F1 driver or a F2 driver, but to be left hanging like that by the team that said, you know, it's going to invest in you, it's going to bring you up, it's going to put you in a seat. You know, what is Oscar going to do in the meantime? He's not going to have any bum in seat time, which for a driver is so crucial. So I understand what Toto's saying, and I think having proper contracts, yes, that is the key here to not having something similar happen to another team. But it's kind of all on Alpine, and not doing that properly. So yes, cool, get more lawyers, write better contracts, but also don't expect your junior drivers to sit and wait when they have such a loose contract agreement anyway. So it's been fascinating for sure. I've often said sometimes, even when we talk about stewarding decisions, it sometimes feels a bit more like a court of law than it does, say, a football match where a referee just decides. But yeah, this has really been a courtroom drama. I can't wait for the Netflix coverage of it, because if they've got any kind of background stuff on it, it will be explosive. So yeah, I think I don't think it's fair to say it set a precedent. I think just get your contracts in order, make sure they're watertight, and don't leave young talent, which everybody on the grid agrees he's wonder talent. Hence why McLaren took the risk with him. Don't leave them hanging.
All right, Jess, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks so much. Bye.